So Joe Biden is honestly way, way worse than any of us could have imagined.
I mean what I say when I say it. I mean what I say when I say it.
It was more than 4 decades ago as a battle raged across the country and in Congress over sending white students to majority black schools and black students to majority white schools, often far away from their own neighborhoods. Biden forcefully opposed the government's role in trying to integrate schools, saying he favored desegregation but believed busing did not achieve equal opportunity, particularly how he followed the lead of and sought support from some of the Senate's most fervent segregationists.
Now to the race for 2020 this morning and new backlash against former Vice President Joe Biden. He's refusing to apologize as he faces growing criticism over comments he made about being able to work with others in Washington. But his examples were segregationist senators 40 years ago.
Instead of apologizing, Joe Biden is now doubling down. This morning, Joe Biden defiant.
Apologize for what?
Refusing to apologize for touting his ability to find common ground with senators he disagreed with, even segregationists. Biden describing Senator Herman Talmadge of Georgia as one of the meanest guys I ever knew, but adding, well, guess what? At least there was some civility. We got things done. And recalling Senator James Eastland of Mississippi, Biden said, he never called me boy. He always called me son.
To coddle the reputations of segregationists, of people who, if they had their way, I would literally not be standing here as a member of the United States Senate, is, I think, it's misinformed and it's wrong.
But Biden is not backing down.
There's not a racist bone in my body. I've been involved in civil rights my whole career. Period. Period. Period.
Do you agree today that you were wrong to oppose busing in America then?
No,
do you agree?
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education. She'd call me Joey B, so we may be related or something.
Yep, Cardi B and Joey B.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
The comment may have been directed just at Charlemagne, but it plays into the false notion that Democrats own the black vote and don't have to earn the black vote.
Just some really major policy commitments for the black community, mainly in the form of economic justice, so we can, tip the scales on some of this wealth inequality in America. I do hear a lot of people say, we also want him to have a black woman running mate, but not just any black woman running mate, one that's going to actually, get in office and care that black people benefit from her presence there. We need substance and significance over symbolism.
Do you support reparations for black people?
Well, listen, you have to recognize that everybody did not start out on an equal footing.
So by default, it affects black families, but there's not a particular policy for African Americans that you would explore.
But no, listen, the reality also is this: any policy that will benefit black people will benefit all of society. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people. No.
So when I talked to Q, we both have the same concerns. The concern that many of us have is that black people are not getting the attention that we deserve, that the black community is being ignored, that the Democratic Party has been pretty much engaged in what is called benign neglect. I talked to Dr. Claude Anderson today, and he feels the same way. He feels that the Democratic Party has pretty much been pissing on black people for 50 years, and black people have been allowing this to happen. They've been doing R. Kelly on us. And we've just been sitting here and we take it, I guess, because we like it. I don't know. Some of us like abuse. Some of us don't. I'm not in for that. I'm not into being abused. And
our next guest is Ice Cube. If you know anything about him, and you probably do, he started his career rapping in defiance about police presence and the realities of inner city life. And he got political with his songs as well. Recently, during the Trump administration, most recently in 2018. Here's a taste.
Thanks for having me. Chris, your lead-ins are a little misleading.
How so?
Well, the Platinum Plan is not my plan. I came up with the contract with Black America, and I didn't run to go work with any campaign. Both campaigns contacted me. Both campaigns wanted to talk to me about the contract with Black America. One campaign said, we love what you have, but let's really dig into it after the election. And one campaign said, we love what you have. Do you mind talking to us about it? And that's what I did. So I didn't run to nobody. And so that was real misleading to me.
Well, I didn't say you ran to anybody. I said that you had taken a pivot.
Well, you said I ran over to the Trump team instead of the Biden team. That's just not true.
Well, but you are working with the Trump team instead of the Biden team, and people are giving you heat for it. What do you say to them?
Well, I'm willing to work with both teams, but I'm just working with whoever is willing to work with me. So the Trump campaign came to me and asked me to explain to them some of the contract with Black America. That's what I did. I'm not playing no more of these games, these political games. We're not part of a team. We have very broad problems, especially the wealth gap in this country when it comes to Black Americans. So I'm going to whoever's in power, and I'm going to speak to them about our problems specifically. I'm not going there talking about minorities. I'm not going there talking about people of color or diversity or none of that stuff. I'm going there for Black Americans, the ones who are the descendants of slaves. And that's what I'm going to talk to anybody who's in power with that. So if anybody got a problem with that, it seems like a personal problem.
Unfortunately, you have members of the Black elite, and I'm gonna go ahead and just, mention Roland Martin, not because I'm trying to be nasty, but because these individuals get taken care of by white Democratic leaders when they corral Black votes. Their goal is to collect Black votes and deliver Black people to the polls.
Can you all see this image? Can you see that image, baby? Watch this. Let me show you what I posted earlier today so you'll know. This is real. Come up close to the camera, family. This is real. This is real. This is real. It's an intervention. This is not a doctored image. This is all real. Those are tears. This was not just a few tears that he shedded. This was a hysterical flood of emotions and tears from Uncle Roro.
Tonight, the final hours until Election Day. The candidates in the battlegrounds on the last day of the campaign. Donald Trump holding 5 rallies in 4 states. Joe Biden concentrating on critical Pennsylvania. Our new poll, where the race there stands.
I keep getting a lot of texts, a lot of emails, a lot of questions from my friends all over the place wanting to know, why hasn't CNN yet projected a winner?
Can now project that former Vice President Joe Biden has been elected President of the United States. He is President-elect Joseph Robinette Biden at 77 years old.
This Sunday, it's Joe Biden. Celebrations break out around the country as Joe Biden takes Pennsylvania and the presidency.
We came here to celebrate democracy. We are proud Americans.
I am so excited. I was so nervous the past couple of days.
I can breathe for the first time in 4.5 years.
One side of a deeply divided country is celebrating this weekend. A nationwide block party broke out from coast to coast yesterday in spontaneous celebrations, mostly in cities, moments after television networks called the election for Joe Biden.
We love Joe Biden. It's the election of our lifetime. It impacts our future so much, and it just means so much that it's happening. We did it. We did it.
Ecstatic. I'm ecstatic. Like, that's it. Like, it's electricity going through my body at this very moment.
He shows himself to be characteristically thin-skinned when challenged at all, something, of course, we've seen before. The perniciousness of hollow identity politics also on full display with Biden in one really bizarre moment lecturing these leaders, quote, "You guys are going to have to start working more with Hispanics, who make up a larger portion of the population than y'all do in terms of raw numbers." Always awesome to have some weird zero-sum competition between demographic groups. But there were 3 incredibly revealing pieces of information communicated in this call that literally tell you everything you need to know about how the Biden administration is actually going to go. Put together, they are a true bombshell, and honestly, the landscape that we are facing is even worse than I thought.
A lot of people in our community are getting a little anxious because they are not seeing enough of the progress they thought they would have seen at this point. Let's not disappoint them, and let's not get to a place where voters in Georgia begin to second guess.
Okay, let me respond. I've got to go. Let me respond. There's a lot to respond to here. Let's get something straight. You shouldn't be disappointed. What I've done so far is more than anybody else has done this far. Okay? Number 1. Number 2, I mean what I say when I say it. I mean what I say when I say it.
Tonight, is it the beginning of the end of the pandemic? The first COVID vaccinations administered in the U.S., the most ambitious vaccination effort in the nation's history now underway. Healthcare workers lining up to receive their shots. Among the very first, a nurse on the front lines in New York City. Her message, healing is coming. Tonight, health officials sounding the alarm as the new strain of the coronavirus already here in the U.S. With Christmas travel in full swing, flights still being allowed into the U.S. from the U.K., where that highly contagious mutant strain has forced a lockdown. President-elect Joe Biden considering mandatory quarantine for U.K. travelers. And the CEO of the company that invented the Pfizer vaccine on whether it will work on the new strain.
As members of the Trump rally-goers continue to make their way up to the Capitol in this protest. Brett Baer, I believe you're still there. It is interesting that what the gentleman from Tampa just told Griff Jenkins. He came to the Capitol because the president said something big was going to happen, and they're just finding out that Mike Pence is going to certify the electoral results. And I'm sure that would be a big disappointment to a lot of people that came for this rally.
Yeah, we should say that, you know, as we're saying it's peaceful, we're seeing the images on the outside. We are having a couple of reports of people being injured in this breach of the security, and that there may be a Capitol Hill police officer. We're getting confirmation of that. But protesters, Dana, have made their way inside the Capitol, and you're seeing the police presence increase on the outside. But there are people inside the actual Capitol building, just outside the Senate chamber, and both the House and Senate have now adjourned or paused this entire process because of the security concerns.
But aren't you, by changing the policy, aren't you encouraging some of these young people to come, which means you're going to have a bigger crisis on the border?
Well, Chris, we've been unambiguous and being clear in the region. This is not the time to come. And this is the difficult choice for everyone. But as a mother, as a parent, I'm not going to support, nor would the president, sending kids under 18, some at the age of 11, 12, 13, back on a treacherous trip across the border to face persecution and difficult circumstances in their country. These kids are coming alone, and this is the choice we've made because we feel it's humane and we feel it's safe.
Plan to reunite the kids? Yes, we're working on it we're trying very hard. But a lot of these kids come out without the parents. They come over through cartels and through coyotes and through gangs.
These 500 plus kids came with parents. They separated them at the border to make it a disincentive to come to begin with. Real tough. We're really strong. And guess what? They cannot, it's not coyotes didn't bring them over. Their parents were with them. They got separated from their parents. And it makes us a laughing stock and violates every notion of who we are as a nation.
Let me ask you a follow-up Kristen, question. they did it. We changed the policy. Your response they to that?
They
did it. We changed.
did not
They built the
separate
cages.
the-
Who built the cages, Joe?
Let's talk about what
Who
we're
built the
talking about.
cages,
Let's
Joe?
talk about what we're talking about. I believe with every fiber in my being that there are simple core values and beliefs that should bring us together as Americans. One of them is standing together against hate, against racism, the ugly poison that has long haunted and plagued our nation. Today, I can say that because of all of you, many of you sitting right in front of me, you've taken that first step. It's an important step. All of this hate hides in plain sight.
It hides in plain sight.
And too often, it is met with silence. Silence by the media, silence by our politics, and silence by our history. For centuries, Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders, diverse and vibrant communities have helped build this nation only to be often stepped over, forgotten, or ignored. Words have consequences, as the senator knows. He preaches it. He understands it. Consequences. But silence is complicity.
If China had acted in a timely manner in that 3-week window when something could have been done, 95% of the cases of COVID would never have happened, and we would not now be in the grip of a global pandemic. That situation is what we are confronting day by day.
Can you explain further what the weaponization of COVID means?
First of all, there was the control of the data, so that nobody else could say things about what was really going on and apportion blame in the way we've been talking about, because people simply were not confident about what we knew and did not know. It isn't just bureaucratic inefficiency, people in Wuhan scared of what their bosses in Beijing will say. This is a deliberate cover-up to maintain control, first and foremost, of what's happening inside China. We mustn't underestimate the importance of the Chinese government trying to control its own people and manage its own disasters, without, of course, the rest of the world knowing, but mostly because they're not sure of how Chinese people themselves will react. And the biggest concern at that time was what would happen if all this came out at the time of Chinese New Year. And of course, we now know that that was the worst miscalculation of all, to think you get away with allowing millions of people to travel around inside and out of China, and that would not inevitably result in what was an infection outbreak, becoming an epidemic, and then a pandemic. That was the massive error of judgment. But that error of judgment was made, I believe, in consciousness of the extent of the problem and the risks associated with it. An extraordinary state of affairs. When Chinese officials say something, that is what they are saying as the notional representatives of the Chinese people, and anybody who disagrees with that is therefore taking an anti-China position. And if you haven't got the strong enough evidence to prove it, there is this. The lie direct is an incredibly powerful political weapon used by totalitarian regimes, but the big lie is out there, and the people who are, one way or the other, captive by Chinese political and economic and other pressures have to toe the line. And if they don't support that kind of story, they're not members of the big China club.
Under 150 days. That's an important milestone that just didn't happen on its own or by chance. It took the ingenuity of American scientists, the full capacity of American companies, and the whole of government response across federal, state, tribal, and local governments. We secured enough vaccine supply for every American. And as I announced last week during my visit to Europe, we are now in a position to provide more than 1.5 billion vaccine doses to the rest of the world, the 100 poorest nations.
This is the new one-dose COVID-19 vaccine from Johnson & Johnson. In early March, more than 6,000 doses were supposed to be shipped to the city of Detroit, Michigan. But the mayor said no thanks.
Moderna and Pfizer are the best, and I am going to do everything I can to make sure the residents of the city of Detroit get the best.
He was referring to these numbers, the vaccine's efficacy rates. The vaccines from Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna have super high efficacy rates, 95 and 94%. But Johnson & Johnson, just 66. And if you only look at these numbers, it's natural to think that these vaccines are worse than these.
Vaccination rates slow down. There is a new variant first discovered in Peru, and it is spreading quickly. Some scientists fear that it may be resistant to the vaccines.
It may not give as much protection to this new variant.
That's the concern.
The Lambda variant, or C37, is the latest to cause concern among healthcare professionals.
In studies looking at it in vitro, so not in people, but in plates, it showed higher amounts of virus in the cells that they were looking at. And that's why they think it might be more transmissible, or at least more infective.
Some scientists fear the Lambda variant may be resistant to the vaccines.
Two giant goals. The first is 100 million shots in people's arms will have been completed within the next 10 days. And 100 million checks in people's pockets in the next 100 days. Shots in arms and money in pockets.
The Treasury Department and IRS say they've dispersed 90 million stimulus payments so far, but that set the agency back from doing its other job, sending out tax refunds. According to the Washington Post, nearly 7 million tax filers are in limbo and facing substantial delays in getting refunds so far this tax filing season. That number is more than 3 times the number in the same period last year, when fewer than 2 million returns faced delayed processing.
The seminary and other houses of worship in the area are partnering with the community health centers to offer vaccination and vaccination sites. They're seeing these kinds of partnerships, and not just there, but we're seeing them all over the country. People are coming together across different faiths to serve those most in need, with special focus on vaccinating seniors from all races, backgrounds, and walks of life.
In Money Watch now, millions of Americans are waiting in limbo for their money from the government. The IRS is holding 29 million tax returns for manual processing, delaying tax refunds. Usually the IRS sends the money within 3 weeks of taxpayers filing their returns. But a backlog of 2019 paper tax returns is one of the issues bogging down processing this year.
The COVID vaccine rollout is raising questions about returning to the workplace and whether companies can require or will require workers to get vaccinated. That was one of the questions that asked in CNBC's Workforce Happiness Survey.
68% of people who are working at home support a vaccine requirement. Compare that to 54% of those working from their usual workplace. Also, Americans of different races have different takes on requiring a vaccine. 87% of Asian workers support a vaccine requirement. Compare that to 63% of Hispanic workers, 56% of black workers, and 55% of white workers.
President Biden's mission to have 70% of American adults with at least one shot of the vaccination by the 4th of July is facing some headwinds. As of today, 63% have received at least one dose. And if we stay on the current trajectory, the U.S. will fall about 6 million people short of that goal.
So we wanted to talk to some of the millions of people who remain hesitant or resistant to getting the vaccine to find out why. So as you're about to hear, they have many reasons. Here's your pulse of the people. Show of hands, do any of you worry about getting COVID? No, you don't. Okay, so Jennifer, you're a really interesting place to start because you are a registered nurse. And so you, as I understand it, worked in a COVID unit. You saw the worst of the worst, and I would think that you would want to get the vaccine as soon as it's available, but I know that you have hesitance.
Basically, I just want some more research. We've been seeing a lot in the hospital, like just between, the patients and the employees that I work with, we're seeing a lot of adverse reactions after Pfizer, Moderna, and J&J. So it makes me a little leery because you don't know, until you take it if you're going to get one of those reactions or not.
Obviously, because you're in the medical field, that they have researched these things and millions of people have gotten them without adverse reactions.
They don't have the research to support it or deny it. I mean, you can't verify either way right now because there's not enough proper studies done to really show it. And I think we need a few more years, at least a couple more years to see any long-term effects.
ID.me is a federally certified identity provider, specializing in helping people verify their identity online. These days, there are lots of criminals out there stealing other people's identities and committing fraud. Our job is to keep the bad guys out and let only the good guys in. Your ID.me account helps the business and government agencies that you interact with ensure that the person logging into your account is really you, and not someone pretending to be you. We follow guidelines from the National Institute of Standards, a division of the U.S. Department of Commerce, which are the gold standard for identity proofing online, far more rigorous than the rules followed by banks. Creating an ID.me account takes only a few minutes and can be accomplished with just a computer, a phone, and a few pieces of documentation that you probably have in your wallet. Behind the scenes, we confirm the information you shared matches what's on file at government agencies and financial records. We also use artificial intelligence technology to confirm the documents you shared have not been tampered with or counterfeited.
Now, Dieter, recently you started requiring people to verify their identity through ID.me. Now, the goal was to make sure that claimants are who they say they are, but so far the extra step now has been plagued with problems.
ID.me says current unemployment fraud cases are equal to the largest cyber attack in U.S. history. So now you have to go through ID.me first to get your money, but it hasn't been easy for some.
Tonight, Fox 4 working to get you some more answers when it comes to these long wait times we're hearing about for unemployment benefits. We've been looking into this company, ID.me. This is the company the state is using to verify your identity before you can even get your money, your benefits. We've heard from quite a few of our fired up viewers saying these wait times are unreasonably long and have ended up locked out of their accounts in some cases. Some of you saying you've been unable to claim these benefits for weeks, months in some cases.
And more recently, we're learning that people are now being barred from their benefits because they're struggling to verify their identity through a third-party system called ID.me. Since our last piece aired where we asked the governor.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Well, I will call Dane after this. I'll let him know that you asked, and I will have him personally follow up with you guys. Yes, ma'am.
And the head of the DEO for answers.
He called them, quote, a trusted partner, said they're good at what they do.
Our inboxes have been flooded with people saying, I'm struggling too.
Do you mind just saying and spelling your first and last name for me, Pete?
After several conversations and statements via email, we finally got a chance to ask the company why this was happening face to face.
But a lot of people have reached out and said, you know, I'm either struggling to get verified with which is either they're struggling to upload those documents you mentioned, or they've done that, and for whatever reason, they're not showing as verified in your system. And I don't really know what to tell them. Is there any kind of ongoing issue that is recurring that you guys are aware of there?
Not that I'm tracking there.
Right off the bat, a rep for the company says they're not sure why some people are having issues getting verified, but claim only 10% of their customers nationwide are struggling to navigate their system.
Hi, I'm Blake Hall. I'm the co-founder and CEO of ID.me, and this morning ID.me announced that we're offering a vaccine ID as a verified status so that employers and other organizations can trust that their employees and customers have been vaccinated against the COVID-19 virus.
Tonight, the Pfizer vaccine, the first to get full approval from the FDA. Will it be a milestone in the effort to get more Americans vaccinated? This as infections from the Delta variant soar with ICUs packed. President Biden's message to the unvaccinated tonight. The move already leading to more vaccine mandates. Plus, my interview with Pfizer's CEO. Is this going to be a game changer? Do you expect to see more people coming off the fence and getting these vaccines?
Expected, but still historic. Today's full approval of Pfizer's vaccine for people 16 and older marks another major milestone in the pandemic, coming 97 days after the FDA began its official review.
Those who've been waiting for full approval should go get your shot now. The vaccination is free, it's easy, it's safe, and it's effective.
Immediately following FDA approval, a wave of public, private, and government employers announced they will now require staff to be vaccinated. Among them, the Pentagon, affecting 1.4 million active duty troops, with many more expected to follow suit, with the University of Virginia disenrolling hundreds of students who failed to get vaccinated. The FDA's full approval will strengthen legal standing and perhaps bolster inoculation rate.
And what can you tell us about the effectiveness of the drug? We know it was 95% against guarding against infection back in those initial trials, now down to 91%. Is this a one-way trip downward for this vaccine?
We realized through the real-world data that after several months, there is a need for a booster, because that will continue providing you the high level of efficacy that you observed immediately after the second dose.
Does Pfizer expect to require and mandate its employees become fully vaccinated?
We have asked our employees that they should be fully vaccinated or taking twice a week the test. We are making right now a specialized vaccine for Delta. I'm almost certain that we will not need it because booster shot of the current vaccine is very, very, very effective against Delta. But we cannot take that chance.
But silence is complicity.